one of the hardest things that I think we have seen, because you have so much of government. Let me give you an example. You think you might have control to some degree of the budget, which is called the general fund. Well, over time, something appeared to me as an obvious problem, but I couldn't get the Finance Committee to focus on it. This now goes back 17 years. I know you find it hard to believe I've been in the legislature that way, but it goes back many, many years. And when I started noticing that there was another aspect of the budget, if you take the budget, and Gary can tell you about this, you take the budget is that thick, let's say, and it's got one page in it, it's got one line to it, and that one line had something called other, O-T-H-E-R, and then a line that ran out, and it was about 1.7 billion at the time. And a line right under that said federal, and it had about the same amount, and then the state general fund was about 3 billion. Well, that other, I started asking questions about it. I said, what's other? And the answer was, well, that's where agencies have fees and fines, and it's just kind of another other source of funds that come to the agencies independently. And it was 17 years ago I began asking questions about that other fund. We needed to get some information of what was all this about, this other funding. Federal is not much you can do about federal funding, but the other was something that it really was intriguing, and I kept asking and kept pushing and kept getting put off. At that time it was a democratically controlled Finance Committee and chairman. Finally I got this current chairman to put me in charge of a committee last year that started looking at it. And we just have gotten going good on the subject matter, but guess how much other is now of the entire budget? Other is now $7 billion. The general fund is $5 billion, and federal is about 6.5. Other has grown to be bigger than the general fund of the state of South Carolina. And finally we're focused on it. Finally, we get some focus on it. But that's the kind of out of control sort of things that can happen. Another out of control sort of thing that can happen in Employment Security Commission reform. It's a shame we had not had some proper information on that. Apparently some information came to one committee in the Senate. I don't know about the House. Gary, you can tell the group later if the House had adequate information on that, but there are just so many things that when you have government, folks, if we didn't have the Legislative Audit Council to give us accurate information when we request an investigation, we would really be in a mess. And it wasn't too many years ago there was an attempt to get rid of the Legislative Audit Council. That was 7 or 8 years ago, and I was one of the ones on the Senate floor that fought that tooth and nail. I'd have filibustered the budget to keep that from happening, but an attempt to get rid of the one arm that we had that actually could investigate things. And it's uncovered lots of misappropriation of funds and wrongful spending of money. There are some things we do right, a lot of things we do wrong. We're trying now to increase supplies of money that are reserve monies, and I think we've got to do that given the erratic nature of what has taken place with the economy. You learn from experience. That's one of those things we learn from experience. So I'm telling you all this as background to say I think I've seen lots of things that can go wrong and lots of things that can be done right. I believe this gives me a lot of background and help to help with the federal mess we've got. Now, if you think it's bad, multiply what you think by about 50 to 100, because it's worse than you think. The size of the national debt has again been increased, done behind closed doors. There was no media coverage of this. To 14, the numbers are just astronomical. The numbers are just astronomical what we're facing. And here's the problem. The interest alone becomes, in 5 to 8 years, becomes such that it is a significant, and I'm talking about over 22% in my opinion is where the numbers will end up. Over 22% of the federal budget. That means interest alone becomes so out of control. It becomes so out of control with the 14 trillion number that we're looking at. Just to pay the debt bill It's not a minor part of the budget, it becomes a major part of the budget. And there are only two ways then to get that under control, because then the interest payments begin driving the entire budget. I'm trying to give you the big picture problem that a budget writer, whether he's working or she's working for the state government or city council or whoever it might be, if you've got an interest portion of the budget numbers that are out of control, and in this case you've got obviously deficit spending that has kicked in a huge way, that has propelled the debt, the national debt, beyond anything cumulatively that the Congress did under the Bush administration these last 2 years. The Congress has just gone out of control. Then what ends up happening? One of two things to pay the big number on the interest. You either tax at huge rates to bring in more income. Believe me, the Democrats aren't going to talk about controlling spending. That's another way to handle it. They're not going to control spending, not that Congress. What they're going to do is either tax, or they're going to, and this probably is going to be a combination of the two, inflate the money such that the debt becomes less and less a percentage feature of the entirety. That is, they will inflate our money supply. That's called inflation, in case the words didn't quite connect. And instead of seeing 2% inflation per year, you're going to see 15, 20% inflation. And that's going to be the natural outcome of what we're going to see. So, if you thought the economy was in trouble now, I'm telling you that I'm afraid if we can't get control of deficit spending in the budget and the debt, the national debt, we're going to face the outcome of runaway inflation, high taxation, just to be able to pay the interest on the debt in 5, 6, 7, 8 years. That's the looming figure from the perspective of a budget writer, and I'm not in charge of the Finance Committee, but I've been close enough to it over the years to see what's coming. A very simple concept, but one that's applicable not only on the state level, but on the federal